Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from The Federalist. This is dated September 20th. It says the study you're citing about fake, or let me repeat that because it's not fake. It says the study you're citing about right-wing violence is full of fake data, and that's where the word fake came in. Yeah, you see a lot of people citing studies that it's just not true. And in fact, if you want to see like a good case in point of this, there's a semi-viral clip of Megyn Kelly continuing on with the Charlie Kirk tour in the wake of his assassination. And there's some dude that tries to tells her about like, oh no, I've seen the studies are real, and he's like going nuts about it, and she's basically like, yeah, they're full of shit, dude. So this is what we're gonna get into here. And excuse me, had a hiccup. And there's a picture of Donald Trump, thankfully, surviving. So let's get into it. It says, an Antifa-connected researcher with rabid bias against the right is held out as an expert on deciding who is extreme. So if anybody is looking at it from an Antifa perspective, that's someone whose brain is completely clouded and they don't know what they're talking about. So of course it's going to say that because they probably, I'm going to guess, didn't mark anything Antifa-related as violence even at all. So it says, after Charlie Kirk was assassinated last week, conservatives noted that most political violence comes from the left, and all you need to notice that are eyes. That's it. As the left bristles at this fact and has responded by dramatically padding the numbers to pretend the reverse is true. Consider a September 12th piece from The Economist, who's not an entirely trustworthy source. It says, they claimed extremists on both left and right commit violence, which obviously if you're just both-siding it like that and saying it generally, like, yeah, that's true. Although more incidents appear to come from right-leaning attackers, and how you could even come to that conclusion with eyeballs is beyond me. It says, right up front, the piece admits it used data largely compiled by researchers whom skeptical, and yeah, they spelled skeptical wrong, conservatives would probably dismiss as biased. It says the disclaimer is meant to inoculate the Economist audience to its sloppy reporting, as if challenges from conservatives will somehow prove the Economist's accuracy. So that's exactly what it is. They're trying to get ahead of the fact that people are going to look at it and go, there's a problem with your methodology here. And if you see any study like this, look into the people who made the study, because that's probably a hint as to why they're coming up with the results they're coming up with. It says, yes, readers should be beyond skeptical, there's the right way to spell that word, of the source in that piece, the Prosecution Project, which I've never heard of until this moment right now reading the article. Its website claims to track and provide analysis of felony criminal cases involving illegal political violence, terrorism, and extremism occurring in the United States since 1990. The founder and executive director of the Prosecution Project is Michael Lodenthal, although the links naming the website's leadership were broken Friday, meaning no names were visible. Gee, that's a coincidence. Says Google had not yet scrubbed Lodenthal's name from searches. So Google, once again, being evil. Says Lodenthal is an openly anarchist Antifa-affiliated researcher at the University of Cincinnati who, by his own admission, is a far-left violent extremist, the Federalist reported in 2023. So obviously a totally non-biased source for this, right? So we have an Antifa-connected researcher with rabid bias against the right, held out as an expert on deciding who is extreme. It is like using a vegetarian to define which meat eaters are the most humane. None of them, says the vegetarian right. Good example. Says the Prosecution Project lists January 2024 charges against John Reardon of Massachusetts, who made anti-Semitic threats against synagogues and the Israeli consulate. It notes, influenced by events in Gaza, he also said, you do realize that by supporting genocide, that means it's okay for people to commit genocide against you. By the way, as if I have to mention it again, there is no genocide happening in Gaza. There never was. Okay? It's a lie. You've been manipulated if you think that, and you should really try hard to look at the real information. Continuing on, it says, the Department of Justice never identified Reardon's political affiliation, but the Prosecution Project's own account seems to indicate he was a pro-Palestine fanatic, a cause typically associated with Democrats. Yet the Prosecution Project identifies Reardon's crime as rightist because they're identity-focused. And they say that as if nobody on the left is identity-focused. Never mind the fact that they're all groups of people who are like, we need to, they all believe in DEI and woke, and it's like, you guys are obviously identity biased. Like, come on. Says the group also lists 2022 Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act charges against Edme Chevanez, and I apologize if I probably butchered that name, even though Chevanez was found not guilty. The Prosecution Project even includes the posting of racist stickers in its tracker, as if that's comparable to terrorism or violence. It is not. I mean, obviously don't do that with stickers, but it's not comparable to terrorism or violence. One wonders if the group will treat Democrats' desecration of Charlie Kirk memorials with the same seriousness. Most crimes involving race or abortion business are blamed on the right in the data, with nothing to back up those claims. Yet these issues and others often cross over to the left. The Federalist has reported on the progressive anti-abortion movement, for example, and the left's Marxist oppressor versus oppressed framework is manifestly racist. Comb through the ridiculous data on the Prosecution Project's website, and you will soon conclude it is worthless to everyone except leftist propagandists trying to downplay Charlie Kirk's murder and flip the blame for violence in the U.S. to the right. Similarly, a biased study, in scare quotes, by Alex Noresta at the Cato Institute was debunked this week by Amber Duke at the Daily Caller. Amber Duke's actually pretty good. So, says Noresta claims politically motivated violence is rare in the U.S., but that when it happens, right-wing terrorists are more often to blame than the left. That is, when you exclude the terrorists who killed 2,977 victims on September 11th and exclude injuries, property damage, and people who were not killed. Thus, his criteria exclude the 2 assassination attempts on President Donald Trump, for example, which was obviously ideologically motivated. Additionally, Duke found that some of the crimes Noresta blamed on the right were at best questionable and at worst downright wrong. Duke pointed to another lopsided study by the Anti-Defamation League, and as I said before, I'm Jewish, and I think the ADL is just an absolute crap organization that needs to be salted. That doesn't mean violence, just means they need to just not be a thing anymore. Which also claims the right is to blame for increased political violence. Ryan James Gerdusky, and if you don't know who he is, he's the guy who was on CNN that told Mehdi Hassan, made a beeper joke to Mehdi Hassan, who got offended by something that's basically true about him, and that he's a terrorist supporter, which he is. And yeah, that's who Ryan James Gerdusky is, and he's not going to appear on CNN again, but that's who he is. It says he unpacked those magic numbers and noted glaring omissions. For example, the ADL left the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson out of its study, which was obviously a left-wing motivation thing, as you can see by the leftists cheering on the assassin, and the assassin also basically agreeing with every single thing that they believe. It says the motivated reader can slice and dice these numbers in different ways, count marginal hate crimes as politically motivated terrorist attacks, assign different ideological motivations to the individual attacker, and must still conclude that the threat to human life from these types of attacks is relatively small, Noresta writes. He is so wrong. Every crime sends ripples of consequences into the victims' communities. At least half the nation feels victimized by the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We are not counted in these studies. Too many have seen or will see the video of that senseless moment when Kirk was silenced, and I never want to see that again, please. And they will be changed by what they see. If you measure by ripple effect, if you measure by how many members of Congress refused to condemn the assassination, the left is killing it at killing us. Yeah, so I think what to take away from this, it wasn't as deep of a dive as I was expecting, but still, I want to at least put it out there that you, like I said, you just need eyes to see that it's the left that is committing violence. At least let's go with the last decade since Trump came down the golden escalator. Okay, but other than that, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, if you're seeing any of these studies, like I said, check out the methodology behind them, like here, where you can see that the people are obviously ideologically motivated. Other than that, keep your eyes open. Just see what you see and, see what the news isn't telling you. And don't believe the news either, because they all suck. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.